Welcome to the Pindown, your Detroit Pistons podcast. I'm your host, Wes Davenport from Motor City Hoops and Detroit Bad Boys.
And I'm Blake Silverman, writer for Detroit Bad Boys, covering everything from the Pistons to the NBA Draft and the Motor City Cruise.
We are recording here live on a Saturday morning after the Pistons lost to the New York Knicks, but before the game against the Brooklyn Nets. We wanted to get this Knicks game in. We just couldn't go super late last night just due to scheduling. So if you are here live with us on YouTube, on Twitter, on Facebook, right now, leave a like, subscribe. We appreciate you guys getting up early and spending your morning with us. But Blake, I wanted to start off with a not basketball question, but a deep question. You got a little one, right? You got a new member of the family. I wanted to ask you, how different is Halloween with versus before when you didn't have the little guy with you? Like, what's changed,
Well, I feel it. So he's only 9 months old. So I feel like not much has changed yet because he's a little too young to go trick or treating. But I'm sure next year it'll be a lot different. This year was he unfortunately came down with a little something, so wasn't like fully festive and everything. It was okay. He's too young to know what's going on, but next year I think it's going to be, other than sticking at home, passing out candy, trying to get him to a few houses, and maybe being more festive myself, like dressing up. We didn't really dress up just because he had a little something, but I think that's the main difference is when you have kids, you get a little more festive and start dressing up again. You go through this period where you don't have a Halloween costume or anything, and then maybe it comes back into your life at that point, which I think is kind of fun.
All right, I gotta ask, what's the candy move for you? What is the go-to Halloween candy?
Okay, I'm more of a like fruit sour candy kind of guy opposed to chocolate. Right. So I'd go for
like Sour Patch Kids or
Sour
Warheads?
Patch, Skittles, like a gummy something. But if I'm going for like a chocolate thing, I just like the Reese's stuff. Like, got to get a bag of Reese's pumpkins for Halloween. So
classic.
Yeah, we were gonna spend Halloween with just drive the little one around to our family's places to hang out for a bit, but since he was a little under the weather, we stayed home. So I like rushed out last minute to buy overpriced candy and everything. Nice. Which I got plenty, which is good. But yeah, what's your Halloween candy move?
See, I never get my answer to this question when I ask it to other people, but man, I love those Crunch Bars. I've just always loved the Crunch Bars. That's my favorite candy. That, and then Reese's Peanut Butter Cup. You can't go wrong with that. That's classic, right? That's just is Halloween. But those Crunch Bars with I don't even know what's in them, but they're so good. I've loved them.
My wife loves it. Do you remember like the Bunch of Crunch things?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and
those were so good.
Apparently they still make them. Like her coworkers were asking me what her favorite candy was for her birthday, and I said that, and they were like, they still make those, and somehow they found them. So yeah, if you're looking for a little nostalgia, those are still out there and they're still good.
The Bunch of Crunch was back in college and in high school for a little bit. But when you're an athlete and you're just doing you're doing the sport all the time, you can afford to eat some really bad stuff with some regular basis. And man, when it'd get around Halloween time, I'd be just getting the box of the Bunch of Crunch, just walking around the school, walking around the campus, just pouring them in all day. I loved them so much. So I'm right there with your wife. Those are great.
They remind me of a classic like movie theater candy, just in those like boxes, something you just grab before you head in. So yeah, I'm a fan of those too.
Well, speaking of scary things, the Pistons lost to the New York Knicks last night. I know, I'm getting better at this, right? But so they lose to the New York Knicks 128 to 98. Honestly, that game probably should have had an even wider margin than the 30-point game that it was. At some points, I think it got all the way up to 35. really the Knicks punched the Pistons in the mouth there early in the first quarter. Pistons never really recovered. Energy was low. Just a bad game. I don't want to spend too much time on this one, only because, well, I think there's quite a bit we could take away from it at this point. It was very much an outlier. I mean, energy and effort was a big problem against these Knicks. The Knicks are a really, really good team, but that's not the entire reason why they blew the Pistons out. The Pistons just kind of didn't show up for tip-off, so to speak, and that's not been something that we've seen through the previous 5 games that they had played. So, I don't want to belabor the Knicks game, but I think it would be good for us to dive in. So just what were your general thoughts, I guess, on how badly that game went, how quickly it went south, and then maybe we could dive into a couple of individual players too.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I didn't really expect them to win that game, so it wasn't a shock. I would have expected it to be a little, probably much more competitive than it was. Just the what sticks out to me, and it's not just the Knicks game; it's really every game is turnovers and defense. Against the Knicks, the Pistons turned the ball over 22 times, and Cade Cunningham only had 1 turnover. So a lot of turnovers from guys that you just can't have 3, 4 turnovers from. I just thought it was a lot of sloppy passes, not making the right reads, things like that. And the Knicks only turned the ball over 9 times. So yeah, I just thought they didn't show up. I mean, that's a really tough team they played. They gave them a lot of open looks, and they paid for it. It was really as simple as that. I hope when they play the Nets on Sunday, it's a little bit of a wake up call, because yeah, you just got to turn around and go out there and compete. It was a tough one overall. It was tough to watch. I give anyone who stuck that one out on a Friday night a ton of props. But yeah, overall, I just think the continuing problems for me are turnovers, and then defense. I mean, there's been making shots down the stretch as well for the Pistons, but at least they got that one win against the Sixers. But overall, I just think they need to figure out ways to turn the ball over less and tighten things up on defense.
I mean, I wouldn't blame you or anyone else for having flashbacks to late last season while watching this game, right? I mean, I was having flashbacks to late last season. If you look through the box score, what jumps out immediately, like you said, is those turnovers. The 22 were huge, but it's who turned it over. It's guys who can't afford to turn the ball over, like Tobias Harris with 3, Jalen Duren with 3. Tim Hardaway Jr. hardly handles the ball at all for this Pistons team. He had 1. Jaden Ivey had 4. That's a little bit more excusable because he does handle the ball so much. But even so, 4 turnovers, not a great night when you've only got 2 assists. You jump down to the bench. You had 2 turnovers from Simone Fontecchio. Looks like 3 from Ron Holland, 3 from Malik Beasley. These are just the guys that you can afford to have turnovers with are Cade Cunningham and Jaden Ivey. And even then, you really want those guys to minimize it, right? Like Cade Cunningham only having 1 turnover against the Knicks. That's a pretty good game taking care of the ball wise for him. I think he struggled in other ways, but he at least took care of the ball well. Point is, you could live with it if he doesn't. You can live with it if Jaden Ivey doesn't. What you can't live with is your starting center who played only 18 minutes against the Knicks, having 3 turnovers and 2 assists. You can't live with that. You can't live with the rookie off the bench who really isn't doing all that much ball handling, having 3 turnovers. And this is stuff we've talked about before, right? You and I have, really hammered this point home late last season with some of the front court turnovers that were being generated even on nights where Cade was pretty clean. So this really was in almost every way a very similar game to what we've seen last season. Yeah, Bobby Bucket saying everyone but Cade had turnovers last night. Absolutely spot on. Derek Brown saying, what's up? What's up, man? I appreciate all you guys tuning in early in the morning with us here. But, the other things that go wrong, like you said, shot making, right? 32% from 3. Not great. The defense was atrocious. Maybe we can sit there for a second, and because we should talk about not just Jalen Duren, but also Tim Hardaway Jr. and Jaden Ivey, I thought were especially rough out there on the perimeter. But yeah, in almost every way, the way that they lost this game, the way that they got blown out, it looked a lot like what happened last year. And these were things that we've seen coming with the earlier games too. We've seen them struggle with defense. We've seen them struggle with turnovers and having cold nights from three. But the games were competitive because the effort and energy was there, and that just wasn't the case against the Knicks.
Yeah, 100%. And Thomas Hardy brings it up in the chat, like getting beat on back cuts. I just thought against the Knicks for sure, it was a lot of losing your man, like guys not making the right rotation. And it
Brunson
just,
got 4 total back cuts just with his defender sleeping. 3 of them on Ivy, one on Tim Hardaway Jr. Can't have it.
yeah. And hopefully it's something like that's clear tape that you can go back to. And I mean, this version of the New York Knicks, it's the first time that the Pistons saw them, so maybe that's a little bit of an element to it. They just caught them. We know teams with a five who can step out and shoot a little bit. Hasn't been a great matchup, but yeah, I just thought overall it people were just like losing their man, getting a little bit lost on defense, and it leads to a wide open look. And that's as simple as it was. Like the Knicks were knocking their shots down, but it wasn't like they were they were just shooting out of their mind and the Pistons couldn't do anything about it. I thought that they could have stepped up and just like tighten things up a little bit more to at least make some of those looks a little bit tougher. And that didn't happen. Hopefully, it's something that they can clean up. And I mean, they have a little bit better of a matchup against the Nets. I'm honestly a little more worried because the Nets look decent right now. And Cam Thomas is going to be someone that you have to contain. But yeah, overall, I thought it was fairly sloppy game against the Knicks, and it hopefully this off day you can look to it and come out just totally different in your next game.
So let's sit on this defense point for a second because I think a lot of things went wrong. We're obviously looking in the chat, like you said, talking about back cuts, guys losing their man on the perimeter. Absolutely, I completely agree. I saw it too. So let's start there. Probably, maybe you'd agree, maybe you disagree, but I thought two of the worst performers defensively on the perimeter were Tim Hardaway Jr. and Jaden Ivey. So why don't we start with those two? What went wrong there for both of those guys from your view?
I think it was just like awareness and getting a little bit ball watchy, but honestly, I think just like stepping back, bigger picture, I think the starting five you're rolling out right now just might not lend you toward being a super strong defensive team. Like Jaden Ivey and Cade, although I think they've both played fine defensively this year, they're not perimeter defenders you're throwing out there and like they're not known as great defenders. You want them out there for what they do on offense. And then next to them you have Tim Hardaway Jr., who's not a great defender himself by any means. So it's so tough because I'm like, if Asar Thompson comes back, you can just insert him in there. He'll be your top perimeter defender and just like help this team a lot on the defensive end on the floor. But you also have Jalen Duren in the starting lineup, and putting Asar in there really hinders you offensively. So I'm just wondering if this like Cade, Ivy, THJ group is not holding the team back defensively. I feel like you just don't have great defensive players in your starting group, especially when you add Jalen Duren into that mix. So I feel like there has to be a tweak somewhere, but it's kind of like pick your poison because then on the offensive end, I've thought Tim Hardaway has looked great at times, didn't have a good game against the Knicks, but yeah, it's like what do you want to do? But all I know is like something has to be done defensively to just help these guys out because I feel like there's a lot of pressure on like Cade and Ivy defensively specifically, and I feel like that's not the best thing for this team to do.
You bring up a really good point. I mean, you could expand it beyond the starting five, right? Look at this roster. Right now, because we can't count Asar Thompson, he's not healthy. There is exactly one plus defender on the roster that is playing in that 9-man rotation, and that's Isaiah Stewart. Ron Holland is a roller coaster of a defender. He makes a lot of plays, but he gives up just as many. Simone Fontecchio is, I would say, neutral. He has games, and he has had games in the past where I think he's a positive, but that hasn't happened yet this season.
Such a weird start to the season for him, by
Very,
the way.
yeah, extremely. And then you're right. I mean, Cade and Jaden Ivey both, I think, border on neutral on their best nights, especially Jaden Ivey. He's always been better on ball, pressuring the ball handler than he is off ball. And I think in some ways this was just a particularly terrible matchup for him. If you look, he had no answer for Jalen Brunson at all. And if you look at what Jalen Brunson did to him, it really was just he old man gamed him to death. You know, he beat him on the fundamentals, beat him on back cuts, used his body to create space. We didn't see Jaden Ivey doing anything that he's not been doing all season in this game, defensively anyway. I mean, the 4 turnovers was something we haven't seen him do yet, so that was new. But just speaking defensively with what he did against Jalen Brunson, it was bad, but it was, to me, it looked like it was bad more because of Jalen Brunson than really him. Whereas Tim Hardaway Jr., I was particularly disappointed in because of the awareness stuff off ball. With Jaden Ivey, that's all baked into the cake. We know that that's what we're going to get out of him. Generally speaking, Jaden Ivey's going to provide a lot of ball pressure. He's going to jump passing lanes. He's going to get some steals here and there. And then he's also going to, fall asleep off ball and give up some back cuts that way. And at this point, you just kind of have to live with it. That's just part of his game at this point. It's baked in, like I said. But Tim Hardaway Jr. is a vet. He should know better than to get back cut as often as he did. He should know better than to fall asleep off ball and just be late on a closeout like he was a few times against the Knicks. So all that's to say, on the perimeter, I know I think Ivey was a worse defender than Tim Hardaway Jr. against the Knicks. I'm less worried about Jaden Ivey defensively than I am Tim Hardaway Jr. based on this Knicks game, just because of those expectations. I'll let you respond to that, and then we should probably talk about Jalen Duren.
Well, I'll kind of transition into that because I think, like you mentioned, Jaden Ivey, it was a lot of Jalen Brunson just going insane and picking everything
Old man
apart.
game. It was a lot of fun if you were not a Pistons fan.
But I just thought, like, if Brunson got into a pick and roll and called Jalen Duren up and he's in drop coverage, like Brunson got to that little like floater pretty much all day. Like he just had a clean look, and I felt like that killed the Pistons a little bit too. And we've talked before about like what you're giving up when you have like a big in drop, but that just kind of stood out to me yesterday. I feel like Brunson was able to either get that floater or get like a pass, whatever he was looking for, pretty easily.
Yeah, this next game was actually these past 2 games. The 76ers game was also incredibly bad defensively for Jalen Duren. I know there was a lot of foul trouble for him in that one, but he also performed very poorly against Andre Drummond when he was out there. But just focusing with the Knicks, it should be really obvious at this point, I would think, to most people, even if they don't really understand the nuances of drop coverage, to see how different the drop coverage looks when it's Isaiah Stewart versus when it's Jalen Duren playing as that drop big. Isaiah Stewart pretty consistently does a good job of playing 2, specifically against a roll man, right? So when you have a pick and roll and the big actually rolls to the rim, your drop coverage big is actually kind of playing a zone, right? They need their hands up. They're playing both the ball handler and the roller. They need to be stunt and recover, right? Try to make that ball handler uncomfortable until the guard can get over the top and then back in front of the guy. And truthfully, what we're seeing a lot of is when the ball handler goes hard to the rim, that ball handler is not getting back in front right now. So part of this is on the perimeter. But what Isaiah Stewart is very good at doing is still making that ball handler uncomfortable. There was a point, I think this was in the third quarter, really great example of this, where McCall Bridges gets a screen from Cat. Cat rolls hard to the rim, and Isaiah Stewart just kind of stunts and recovers so well and so essentially erratically. He made McCall Bridges be indecisive, take a really weird kind of fadeaway floater, got the rebound, and Pistons were going the other way. He has multiple possessions a game. Isaiah Stewart, that is, has multiple defensive possessions a game as a drop big where he just causes a miss even if the guard did something wrong. And that's the value of your drop coverage. I thought Isaiah Stewart was as effective as you could have asked anyone to be against Karl Anthony Towns against the Knicks. Karl Anthony Towns is a very, very good player, very good scorer. The reason that Jalen Duren, though, only played 18 minutes, even though he only had one foul, was because he was especially bad against Karl Anthony Towns as a scorer. He was giving Karl Anthony Towns wide open threes, closing out late. He was not boxing out, as was brought out in the chat. He was flat-footed, and Karl Anthony Towns took him off the dribble at least 3 times that I can recall off the top of my head. And again, this is just 18 minutes of basketball, so it was an especially bad night for Jalen Duren, and I don't think we can just call it a scheme thing. It's not just that, oh, well, Cat's a stretch big and that gives Duren problems, because it doesn't give Stewart these same problems. Stewart's executing the scheme extremely well, even though he's giving up almost as much as he's giving you on defense offensively. Isaiah Stewart was very rough on the other end of the floor against the Knicks and pretty much every other game this season. So I'm not saying, bench Duren for Stu. I think that has a whole host of other problems as well. But just speaking defensively, it's been very bad, very, very bad. Not just against the Knicks, but all season, all 6 games. Very bad.
Yeah, the tough thing is I don't think it's as simple at like Jalen Duren. Yes, against the Sixers, he was in foul trouble and didn't get very many minutes. But yeah, 18 minutes against the Knicks. I think what we're seeing, and some of that was garbage time that influenced it. But I don't think it's as simple as just putting him on the bench for Stu and seeing how it works for a few games. Because I mean, ideally, Isaiah Stewart is your backup big, and I don't think he is just a long-term starting 5. If you have to give him spot starts for a few games, like, that is what it is. But I don't know, I just think it's this group that they're rolling out right now is not sustainable defensively. But frankly, I'm just having trouble seeing what the solve is with this roster. And then I'm trying not to overreact after just 6 games, but I feel like once you get through that 20 game mark, a quarter of the season, and if we're still having the same conversations, I feel like you really need to evaluate whether it not at the trade deadline this season, but heading into this off season, like, what do you need to do to fill the gaps that this team has? Because I feel like they're just so glaring. And Thomas Hardy mentioned it in the chat, like Trajan Langdon, it's probably definitely seeing the same things, and we'll see how he's able to finagle it. But it just seems clear to me that the roster isn't what it needs to be, and I feel like there has to be some changes eventually. Still give it some more time, but yeah, it hasn't been great. You have to do something to make this team improve on defense.
I'll be honest, I don't think it's an overreaction at all. Everything that you just said, I think that makes not only a lot of sense, but the fact that we can track most of this stuff back to last season. I mean, we could go back further too if we want to talk about the defensive performances of Cade Cunningham, Jaden Ivey, and Jalen Duren as well, Isaiah Stewart too. This has been pretty consistent throughout their careers. I think Cade and Ivey have both been better defensively. I'm not entirely convinced that it's anything that those two are doing differently, though. I think they're being put in much better positions. We're JB Bickerstaff is moving Cade off the ball defensively more often. It's letting him play a little bit more of that free safety, so he's making more defensive plays, right? He's getting more blocks, he's getting more steals, and I think that's generally a very good thing. That's what you want out of Cade, right? Jaden Ivey's almost exclusively the dog that they're sending lead ball handlers, right? He's pressuring the ball hard. He's picking up sometimes three-quarter court. He's just trying to make life hard for the opposing point guard. Is he still getting beat backdoor? Yes. Does he still make errors even while he's guarding the ball? Brunson caught him flat-footed a few times. Yeah, that happens when it's not just Jalen Brunson. So he does still have all these same issues, but they're both being kind of used in a way that sets them up to be far more neutral defenders than I think they have at any other point previously in their career. And you pair that with what they're doing offensively, then, great. You can work with that. You can work with your backcourt being neutral, especially if you can kind of move the chess pieces around like this. But like you said, it's a problem when 0 out of your starting 5 are plus defenders. It's a problem when 2 of your starting 5 are neutral defenders, because I think Tobias Harris has been pretty bad defensively so far this season too. And we talked about Tim Hardaway Jr. and we talked about Jalen Duren. You expand that out to the bench, like we've been saying, Isaiah Stewart's the only plus defender consistently on this roster right now. And we can track this all the way back to last year. So it's just, I don't think it's an overreaction. I think what we're finding out and what we'll continue to find out is if Cade and Ivey can keep up this kind of offensive production, this last game against the Knicks notwithstanding, I think both of them have taken a step forward on that side of the ball. So if they can both keep up that offensive production and continue to be roughly neutral defensively, I think what you're learning is, okay, if those are 2 guys that you're going to try to build around, you need an Asar Thompson out there. You need someone at the 4 who can actually guard down on the perimeter instead of potentially guarding up. You need a big that can erase shots because he's going to get a lot of opportunities to do so. It's not what they have right now, and that's obviously a pretty big problem.
Yeah, and it's like the tough thing is, do you think you need to see what this roster looks like when Asar Thompson is back in order to maybe not make changes, but make up your mind that some sort of change needs to be made? Or do you just think it is what it is? The groups on this roster that have holes are never gonna improve, or do you think Asar could just improve the team context pretty quickly?
Yes and no. Look, I think it's honestly a little too early to be talking about trades and what moves Langdon can make. Like you said, it has just been 6 games, and I mean, more than anything, it's just too early in the season for other teams to be willing to make trades. Mm-hmm. So at this point, it's not anywhere near trade season. This is the roster you got. I think you just roll with it. But I don't think that Asar Thompson is dramatically going to change the context here. I would be far more open to moving Duren to the bench if Asar Thompson were healthy. I do think that if you are inserting 2 plus defenders into your starting lineup, that could actually make a little bit of a difference here, right? If you were starting Cade, Ivey, Asar, Harris, and Stu, that's now 2 plus defenders, 2 neutral defenders, and then Tobias Harris is probably your worst one out in that starting 5. I do think that that's actually a material difference that you would see starting games. The problem then is now both of your plus defenders are in the starting lineup. So, how are you got to stagger them somehow now when we're looking at bench lineups, which is tough to do because Stu and Asar are probably the 2 bigs that make the most sense together, given both of their limitations at this point. We've talked plenty about how Asar and Duren is really a tough combo. I think with Stu's limitations offensively, you're kind of seeing problems with Isaiah Stewart with a lot of ball handlers who just need pick and rolls because he's not great at that. Long story short, I don't think that adding Asar Thompson just magically fixes things. Yeah. You could conceivably get off to a better start, but it has to be pointed out, you're giving up quite a lot offensively if you do that. Moving from
Mhm.
Jalen Duren to Isaiah Stewart as your starting five, you're losing Duren's ability as a screen setter and as a roller. He's a very good lob threat for Cade. That's an outlet. He's a very good lob threat for Jaden Ivey. That's a really good outlet for him as well. He's very good in the dunker spot. He's got soft hands. He's generally good at catching those dump off passes, which is a big plus. And then he's one of the best offensive rebounders in the league. So that's a downgrade if you're going to Isaiah Stewart. Yes, you're much better defensively, but you are worse offensively, especially with how Stewart's been playing on that side of the ball to start the year. And then same thing's true with Tim Hardaway Jr. As much as you're giving up defensively with him, he's been, 40%, close to 40% from three this season on good volume and with contested looks too. It's not like he's just getting wide open corner threes for every single one of these attempts. You're not getting that with Asar Thompson, and you're maintaining some of these same, you don't really want to put the ball on the floor type of turnover concerns, even when you make that switch. So the point I'm making is, at this point, with the way this roster is constructed, with those guys specifically, you're trading off offense for defense if that's the way you want to go. And I'm very sympathetic to what they've been doing so far, which is just our defense sucks. Let's try to score a lot of points. It hasn't happened in every game, but they were competitive against the Celtics, scoring, what was that, 118. That was probably their hottest game offensively. They were good against the 76ers. I think they were on pace to score a lot more than the 105 that they did, right? They had 2 30-point quarters there. I think leaning into the offense makes a lot of sense just with how this roster is constructed as it is right now. And that's just kind of the reality. They're not going to be a good defensive team.
Yeah, and
I
I
do think,
think
real quick, good point, Asar could play the dunker spot. I just don't think he'd play it as well.
yeah, I think the issue with having Asar and Stu out there is like Stu this year, it just seems like whoever the opponent is, the plan is to make Stewart put the ball on the floor because then bad things happen. And then Asar, like we know he needs to tighten up his handle. We haven't seen what he looks like in year two, but we know that that's an issue for him as well. So I like we know we're giving up offense for defense in that starting lineup. I just think like the turnover issue might even get a little worse if that group is getting a little more minutes, which is a scary thought to say. But like you mentioned, no
Real
matter how,
quick, Blake, do you
yeah,
do you remember against the Knicks game here, the wide open three that Isaiah Stewart turned down? Then he drove to the middle into traffic, mind you, into traffic. Tried to do a step back between the legs, mid range jumper. Almost lost the ball. Wasn't a turnover. Should have been. But that's the perfect encapsulation of his process offensively so far this year. He turned down an open three to drive into traffic and get fancy for some
well,
reason. Oh my Lord, that was wild.
hey, at least he took 2 3-pointers, which I believe was the first time he took a three and since the opener. So yeah, yeah, Bobby Buckets mentioned the same thing. So but like you said, Wes, I feel like no matter what way you slice it, no matter how healthy the team is, you're always going to be giving up something in one way or another. And it's like, pick your poison. And right now, we know defense is an issue, but if we make changes in the lineup that are to just prioritize defense, I feel like you're giving up a lot on offense. I think you should try things, just see how it goes because what's going on right now is not super sustainable, but it's just tough. And I know this year is like Trajan Langdon has said, still asset accumulation mode, not like playoff hopes or anything like that. But yeah, it's just tough to watch. Honestly, I hope at least the compete level is different. And like you said at the top, the Knicks game was an anomaly because it has been so far in just the only 6 games we've seen.
On that note, let's do a little bit more positive here before we get into a couple questions that we got pre-submitted and a few that have already been sent into the chat. Guys, if you are tuning in live with us, of course, again, thank you. I think this is the first morning show that
Yeah,
we've done, right? Yeah, so we
coffee
appreciate it.
episode.
Yeah, the coffee episode. We we should title these anytime we do it in the morning. This is the coffee episode. You with your
We'll workshop that.
you did what's your coffee order again? I know it's a
Oh,
cold
I have a
brew.
cold brew here.
Yeah. See, I got my hot coffee, which makes sense because it's cold out, Blake. But
It
okay,
does that
anyway.
does sound good this morning, I'll be honest. It was like 35 when I went out on a coffee run. So yeah, Bobby Buckets has his coffee as well. We'll have to workshop like a title name as we do
Yeah.
these. But
Well, maybe make it a series, like the coffee
yeah.
shop series of the Pindown or something. But let's talk a little bit more positively because, like we've said, this was an anomaly. This game against the Knicks is not how the Pistons have looked in the 5 games prior to it. So let's talk a little bit about those 5 games. We missed, well, not missed, but since we last recorded, we've got a loss to the Miami Heat, a competitive loss to the Miami Heat, 98 to 106. Another competitive loss against the Celtics, 124 to 118. And then they did get a win against the 76ers, 105 to 95. So what have you seen so far that has stood out to you in those games? Like I just said, they've all been competitive. They obviously got a win against the 76ers. What stood out trend-wise, I guess? What are some things popping up this season?
Man, I feel like I'm laughing at Bobby Buckets in the chat about Bickerstaff playing Tobias at the 5 against the Knicks. I thought that
And
was
then the second half.
it was fun because it was like, yeah, trying something new and the games aren't when the game isn't going well, and I was like, how is this going to work? And then the Pistons immediately go on a 13-3 run with Tobias Harris as their big. But I feel like the biggest thing for me is just how Cade and Ivy look together, both individually and as a pair. I think Ivy has looked really good coming out. Yeah, he didn't play great against the Knicks, and we could still pick apart some things with defense, even though he has looked like a better defender. But I think a big question is whether this pair could work out after all the weirdness with Monty Williams last season, with Jaden Ivey in particular. But I think Ivy has played super aggressive. He's knocking down threes, he's making shots. Is he creates an advantage that not many teams have in the NBA, like just being able with his first step, being able to beat a ton of guys in the league. And I just love the energy that he's played with so far, and Cade as well has been able to take over at certain points, and he's looked good too. But I feel like both them like playing off each other as well as individually seems like that is at least something that's working offensively. And then just like one other quick thing I'll add, Tim Hardaway Jr. has really surprised me so far. I don't know if he's just on a hot stretch, but he's shooting 48.6% from 3 on over 6 attempts, which is pretty crazy. But yeah, biggest thing to me has to just be the Cade and Ivy pair seems like it could work in the long run.
They've both been the Pistons' best players throughout
Hmm.
these first 6 games. I mean, that was even the case, I thought, against the Knicks, even though the Knicks probably had 5 or 6 players that were playing better than those two, right? Just kind of how the game was going. But let's look at their stats from this first 6 games of the season. Cade's at 25 points, 5.7 rebounds, 7.2 assists. He's averaging 2 stocks per game early, which is huge. 4.8 turnovers is obviously you could work on that, but I haven't thought that the turnovers have been as much of an issue this season as maybe the numbers would suggest, and maybe as like some discourses suggested. And then Jaden Ivey, let's see if I can get this to load up.
I got his stats if you need it.
Yeah, read them off.
Yeah, so Ivy is at 19.3 points, 4.5 rebounds, 3.3 assists, and a steal. And he is shooting 43.8% from 3 on over 5 attempts a game. So yeah, a jump to and Wes, he's almost to 20 points. I think you said he was going to be over 20 points. That was your hot take of the season.
Yes, it was, and I'm excited by it. He's right there. If you pulled out this Knicks game, he would have been over
Yeah.
20 points. So unfortunately, just a product of when we were recording this podcast, I could have taken a victory lap on Thursday that I can't today. But it's the free throws and it's the rim attempts that he's getting that have been really, really promising. He is easily, far and away, the best player at getting to the rim and kind of creating havoc in that way on this Pistons roster. And to be clear, I think Cade has been pretty good at that as well. I know his free throw numbers aren't showing it yet. I thought there have been some questionable no calls, like there always tend to be with him, but he's at least putting in rim pressure pretty consistently, which isn't something we've always been able to say about him. He's being more physical around the rim. Cade Cunningham, that is. He's being more physical, using his body and finishing rather well. So that's been a positive too. But with Jaden Ivey in particular, it really is a product of him being put in better positions than he was last season. And he's really taking advantage of it. He's playing really aggressively. I think you mentioned before we actually started recording just the energy that Jaden Ivey's had in a few of these games after a dunk, screaming at the ball, not really talking trash, but there were a couple of he was trying to convince JB to challenge a call in a few of these games, very animated. His energy and his focus has been really, really good. I think it's been really positive. And the fact that he's now producing consistently. I'm struggling to think of a game in these first six where he hasn't been Detroit's second or first best player. Can you think of one? Am I just forgetting something? I mean, he's consistently been a great number two for this team.
Yeah, and like one thing he's leading the team in free throw attempts too, just in general. So yeah, I'm with you. I feel like, and it's not even like him and Cade take turns. Like there have been points where Cade is cold and then he comes on later and he's hunting shots more. But I feel like their offense hasn't really cannibalized each other, which I think is a good sign moving forward. Like there's even though we haven't seen it over a large sample size, I feel like there's a pathway to where this thing can work. Both these guys can play off each other and get their own without totally eating into one or the other's like usage and minutes and everything like that.
Yeah, and to be honest, it never should have cannibalized the other.
They're different, very different players, and they should complement one another.
Right. They're very different players offensively. They've always been very different players offensively, and I've always found it very odd that one of the most unusual parts of last season to me was Monty Williams basically saying that Jaden Ivey is purely an on-ball player, and that is the end of story with that. That is why he started the year coming off the bench. That is why even when he was starting games, they weren't getting staggered. I mean, I know that the conversation, at least coming out of the team, was always focused on defense with Jaden Ivey, right? But at the same time, just the way that they were used offensively, they being Cade and Ivey, it seemed very obvious that Monty Williams did not look at Jaden Ivey as anything other than kind of an on-ball point guard type player. And look, that's not what he was at Purdue. We've talked about this. That's not what he was at Purdue. He played the two at Purdue. Every now and then he'd get ball handling reps because he was their best player, but he was an off-ball guy. They were running him off Iverson screens. They're using that pistol action that we've now thankfully been seeing pretty frequently between him and Cade. Anything to get Jaden Ivey the ball already moving with an advantage. That's what the Purdue offense was doing. And then you saw it the rookie year. Those first, 10 games before Cade went down and got hurt, that was how the offense was running in Detroit too. That's what Dwayne Casey started to do. And only after was Cade out for the season did we see Jaden Ivey become, okay, now we're going to play him as a point guard. Let's get him to develop these ball handling reps. Even at the time, it was never talked about as well, Jaden Ivey just needs the ball all the time, and that's why we're getting him these point guard reps. It was Dwayne Casey saying, hey, this is going to be really valuable for Jaden Ivey to be able to do once Cade comes back, to give Cade a breather. And then
Mhm.
Monty Williams comes in the next season and says, no, 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 no. He's
He didn't
just
watch
because
those
70.
12
Yeah,
games or
he didn't
whatever.
watch the 12 games. That's what it must have been. So the fact that we are now seeing that type of usage for Jaden Ivey, not only is it helpful for Cade, right? Because it does take some pressure off of him, but it's also using Jaden Ivey in the way that got him to be the number 5 overall pick and potentially could have gone higher. It's using him in the way that had so many analysts excited about his potential as a scorer. We're seeing all of that now, and I think that's incredibly exciting. We got a good question here from Jonathan Schwartz. Says, this maybe is jumping the gun a little bit, but he says, how far away from Derrick Rose is Jaden Ivey's ceiling? So I'll let you tackle that one
Oh
first.
gosh, that's a big one. I mean, I guess Jaden Ivey's ceiling is pretty high up there. So I don't know. I just think Jaden Ivey isn't gonna be like the on ball offensive initiator to be the same type of player. But hey, man, like scoring wise, if he's around 20 points a game this year, Derrick Rose, and this was over almost like 15 years ago now, which is crazy, but his MVP season, he averaged 25 points a game. I don't know if Ivy can get up there at some point, but hey, he can sniff like 22, 23 points a game, and that's like he could be an all-star player at that point. So, yeah, like Bobby Buckets brings up more Zach Levine than Derrick Rose. I think that's a good call to just being that off guard scorer, athlete, and everything. So yeah, it's an interesting one. Like right now, I feel pretty good about saying Jaden Ivey has a pretty high ceiling. It's just like, how high is it? What will it turn out into? Which is the $1 million question for a lot of guys on this team, to be honest.
And just to back you up a little bit too, if we can remember back to that Derrick Rose MVP year and the year preceding and immediately following, he was kind of held back by that Tom Thibodeau offense. The Bulls played very slow. They did not have a lot of good shooters. It was very much a throwback kind of team in that way. And he was obviously the best player, the best scorer on that team. So I don't want to, none of this is to try and take away from Derrick Rose. This is more to say, Derrick Rose in a different situation probably would have been averaging 30 points a game, maybe even more than that if he had a system a little bit more set up for successful guard play, which he did not. I'm as big a Jaden Ivey fan as you're going to find. I agree with you. I don't think that the ceiling is all that close to Derrick Rose. Derrick Rose as a playmaker was far better. I think as a scorer, he was better. Jaden Ivey, even though he's been a lot more aggressive this season, I do still think that he could be taking more shots than he is. He's always kind of had that um, desire to be a passer. He seems to really love making plays for other people. I don't think he's any better than maybe average at doing that, at least not right now. But even so, he's not a guy like you can compare it to Ron Holland. When Ron Holland gets in the game, the ball's going up. Ron Holland gets an opportunity to shoot, he don't care. He's shooting the shot. It's very rare to see Ron Holland turn down shots. So that's a guy where you could look at it and, if X, Y, and Z go right, you could see, okay, hey, maybe he's got an upside as like a 30 point per game guy or something like that in the future. I just don't really see that as much with Jaden Ivey. I think Jaden Ivey is his potential is a incredibly good second option for a very good team while being an average defender and ideally a little bit above average as a playmaker for others. But his scoring is never going to be, even with Zach Levine, right? I like his jump shot. I like Ivey's jump shot. I don't know if it's ever going to get to the level of Zach Levine, what he's able to do off the dribble to create his own looks from three at this point, right? So, yeah, I like Jaden Ivey a lot. I don't know about about Derrick Rose's ceiling. You got any more you want to add?
I mean, I think the only thing I'll say is I think that player you're talking about is an all-star. Like, so I
Yes.
think
Yeah.
I think
Potentially even all NBA if the team is successful enough. It'd be
right,
third team, but still.
like Ivy, I feel like a lot has to go right. The team has to be a lot better for a number 2 to make an all-star team, but those spots that go to the Jalen Browns, the like Zach Levine's made, Maxi, and everything like that. So yeah, I think he could very well make an all-star team at some point. I think we're probably years away from that, but I could see it panning out in the future.
YouTube user says, "Remember that ceiling is not a likely outcome."
Correct.
I want to disagree with that actually, only because if it's not likely at all, I don't think it's the ceiling. So that's not how. That's just never how I've looked at it. I don't like looking at prospects and saying, well, if by some magic they gain XYZ skill, they're going to be absolutely incredible, and that's their ceiling. I don't know. I feel like, at least in the past, I've gotten myself into trouble by viewing it that way. So, when I look at like Jaden Ivey, I think he could reasonably get to 24 or 25 points per game, get maybe 4 or 5 assists a night, and be very efficient in doing so with average defense. And that is what I would say his ceiling is, because I think he could actually reach it. I don't think he could get to 30 like Derrick Rose could have done or a Russell Westbrook could have done, But I guess physically he's got the talent to do it. So maybe someone else would disagree.
Even if he gets like just below whatever we're defining as his ceiling, though, like I feel like that's still a good outcome. Like if
Yeah,
Jaden Ivey
absolutely.
was just given the keys to like run with a team, like who knows what he could be, and maybe that's his ceiling individually, but yeah, just playing next to Cade, and if he is that number 2 option, I don't think like if you're looking just at scoring or whatever it might be, like he probably won't hit what his true ceiling is, but I don't know, it's a deeper conversation.
Sorry, trying to look up some stats real quick because I've been trying to think as we've done this whole conversation, who could be a halfway decent like ceiling comp for Jaden Ivey, and I think I just thought of one. Pre-injury Colin Sexton,
Okay.
but slightly bigger and a little more athletic. So look, it was 24.3 points, 4.4 assists, 3.1 rebounds. He only turned the ball over 2.8 times, 1.2 stocks per game. Colin Sexton's one of those guys where he gets a lot of credit as a defensive player, but it's mostly just because he pressures the ball extremely well. He at that time and even now still falls asleep quite a bit, gets beat on back doors. These are all things that we say about Jaden Ivey as well. So like if you added 2 inches of height to Colin Sexton and made him a little thicker, a little more bulky, and a better leaper, I think maybe that's the kind of ceiling that you could get to. But regardless, let's go to this one, and I mean you could comment on that comp too if you
Oh,
want,
no,
just for fun.
that's a
Um,
good one.
yeah, cool. All right. So, how improved are Cade and Ivey's defense this year? This is from Rames. This is a great question because I think their statistical output, both of them, have been better than they have been in years past. Excuse me. So, what do you think? What strides have they made so far defensively?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is just the energy and different like you have a new staff and everything like that. I think they're being asked to do a lot more. Like Jaden Ivey is guarding the primary option and he hasn't been just a turnstile or anything like that. He makes whoever it is work for it. Does he make those mistakes at certain points? Yes. But similarly, like you said earlier, Wes, Cade is being put in that role where he's playing free safety a bit and gets to make some more plays off of that. Like so far through 6 games, he's averaging 2 stocks, and last season he was 1.3. So that's a considerable margin. We'll see how it changes as the year goes on. But overall, I think the just like the effort is a little bit up there. Maybe effort's not the right word, but energy just after a horrible season. I feel like it looks a bit different. And also just because of you don't have your Asar Thompson right now. The groups that they're playing in aren't defensive lineups by any means. I feel like it asks more of Cade and Ivy, which I don't love honestly, but I feel like they're doing a good job with it for the most part. Because of everything they're asked to do on offense too, you can't ask them to just be staunch defenders at all time or expect them to be. But I think with what they're being asked to do, they're doing a good job. And Jaden Ivey specifically being that on ball guy, not perfect by any means, but I think he's at least shown improvement as opposed to what we've seen over his first 2 years.
I think to me, just like the offensive side, so I completely agree with you, right? I think just like on the offensive side of the ball, where we've been talking about how JB Bickerstaff has done a great job putting Cade and Ivy and setting them up for success offensively, just through the sets that he's trying to run and the actions that he's repeatedly having them take part in, right? I think the exact same thing is true on the defensive side of the ball. You look at a guy like Cade Cunningham and other players like him that are exceptional processors of the game of basketball. They see things extremely well, sometimes even one or two steps ahead, right? That is something that Cade Cunningham has. That's a talent that he has, an ability that he has, but he's never been a guy that you could just stick on a ball handler and tell him to go get stops. That wasn't even really his game so much in college. He'd flash it every now and then, but it wasn't consistent. But so what they're allowing him to do by playing that free safety role, by sticking him out on a low impact wing and kind of asking him to play the field, is he's getting to read the floor defensively and try to make plays based on what he's seeing the offense doing, what he's seeing come open. And we've seen that. It's 2 stocks per game. Like you said, that's actually tied for the most on the team. Tobias Harris and Isaiah Stewart also are getting 2 stocks per game. Jalen Duren is only at 1.4. Jaden Ivey is only at 1. So those 2 guys have a lot to work on there. But regardless, this is the exact type of role that you want from a high usage offensive player like Cade, who is a good processor. This is the way that you can allow them to kind of take a break, so to speak, on the defensive end when, help with the endurance and all that, as all of these big offensive load superstars do, but still have a positive impact because he can create plays defensively. So I think that this is a great way to use Cade, and I'm very intrigued to see what's going to happen when Asar Thompson comes back, if they are going to start him and then ask Asar to play down against guards, which I don't think is necessarily his strength defensively. He's good at it because he's good at just about everything defensively, but I don't think that's his best usage on defense. He'd be better off on a wing or playing up against a 4 potentially as well. Regardless, I think that's been great with Cade. And then with Ivy, I know that the stocks are low, but having a guy like him who's tall, he's strong, he's got long arms, and he's incredibly athletic, having that guy just try to basically disrupt the lead ball handler for the other team, even with all of the lapses that he's still providing. He is still getting back cut. He is still falling asleep sometimes, even on the ball, getting flat footed. Jalen Brunson, like we said, burned him a few times against the Knicks. But you can live with that if he's being otherwise disruptive to the offense by just putting all that pressure on lead ball handlers. So to me, again, I don't think that I have seen either of those 2 doing anything unusual to their games. I don't think that the improvement we're seeing on defense is because either of them have, figured it out, so to speak. I don't think they've made a leap defensively, but I really think that they're being put in a position to be successful defensively when they hadn't previously been put in those positions, and we're really seeing the benefit of that so far this season. So to me, I think it's a coaching thing. I think the coach is putting them in better spots, And that's why they now look far more like neutral defenders than the bad defenders we saw last year.
Yeah, and honestly, it's pretty impressive that that stands out when overall defense hasn't been great for the unit. So at least the fact that we can talk about improvements that we've seen from two players who are the two guys that it seems like you're most likely to build around right now that aren't known as defensive players, at least being able to pick up these things, I think is a positive sign, and hopefully it gets a little better. I mean, the back cut stuff, I feel like it'll always be there a little bit, but I feel like it's something that you can easily at least improve upon or improve your positioning on the floor just to not be in those situations as much as you are. And yeah, like Bobby Buckets brings up Ivy's energy defensively has seemed better. I totally agree with that. So yeah, I think positives that you can take moving forward. Perfect. No, but I think it's definitely good sign for further improvement.
Yeah, and look, if you're getting 25, 5 and 7 out of Cade, along with two stocks playing that free safety role, like you can make that work. That's great. If you're getting 24 and 3 out of Jaden Ivey and he's being, a pest for opposing ball handlers, you can live with the other mistakes too. Like these are both
Yep.
cases where I think to me, if you are getting this efficient offensive production, uh, like you have been getting with these two guys, you can live with neutral. You can make that work. The Pistons don't have the roster right now to actually do that, to actually make it work. But the fact that they're both showing that it's manageable and even worthwhile to pursue, Jaden Ivey and Cade Cunningham both, I think while they've been better offensively, they both still have areas where they could continue to improve and continue to grow. It's not like they're final products and continuously playing at their absolute peak every night. There's been a little bit of roller coaster with both of those guys so far this season, even though the average trend line is going up. So I think if anything, we are seeing through 6 games that, hey, those two are actually worth investing in as a quote unquote core. Like, I feel like we're continuing to potentially prove that. If we're still sitting here at the All-Star break and saying, both of them are over 20 points a game, both of them are efficient, both of them are making a big impact offensively as playmakers, and they're neutral defensively in their own ways, I think you can pretty confidently at that point say, okay, those are the two guys that you're building around with, the wild card of Ron Holland and hopefully what he can bring. Let's do this one question here from our guy Derek Brown, and then we'll probably wrap it up. But unfortunately, kind of a negative question. But if Jalen Duren is not the starting center of the future, who is? Do you want to go draft? Do you want to go free agency trade? I mean,
I
what do you
mean, I
think?
feel like
Like,
it has to just be someone that's not on the roster. The interesting thing is like if if Duran isn't the starting center of the future, like are you trading him away? Are you trying to retain him on a lesser extension and have him come off the bench? But then you have to pay someone else. Like I don't really know the answer. And the interesting thing is, if you want to go draft, it depends how the Pistons turn out. Like if you get another top 5 pick, are you gonna want to use it on a 7-footer who probably is prone to injuries? Like teams are reluctant to do that. But if they're in the back half of the lottery, there's a couple interesting prospects that they can probably take a swing on. And also, it just like if you are going the draft route, he's not a center, but Cooper Flag is like the best defensive prospect in a while, probably. So I don't know. I feel like there's a trade out there. Like who knows what's going on with Walker Kessler, things like that. I just feel like the player has to hit an archetype of I want them to have a little more size and they just have to be able to protect the rim. Like if they're not able to step out and stretch the floor, fine, but I feel like you need someone that's going to impact and redirect shots a little bit more than Duren does if he doesn't develop into that and eventually turn into the starting center of the team.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I would also say off the roster, and then the question of where you would acquire that player. I do in part think it depends a little bit on Asar Thompson and Ron Holland this year. So Jaden Ivey so far, and assuming that this continues, which is an assumption, right? Maybe it doesn't. Maybe after this next game, his season just kind of tanks, and we won't be saying this at the All-Star break. But if Jaden Ivey continues to play as he has been playing, the Pistons are in a position where you've got two guys that you're very confident in building and structuring a roster around. If Ron Holland can continue to improve, where you could go into the offseason thinking, okay, next season he's going to earn some starting minutes at the 3, which I think is on the table. He's been impressive so far, even though there have been some rocky moments. I think it's been more good than bad so far for Ron Holland. If Asar Thompson, when he gets healthy and he gets cleared to come back, if he proves that he should be in a tier along with Jaden Ivey, more so than Isaiah Stewart, then I think I'd be a little bit more open to looking at the draft and specifically for a 4 or 5 in particular to try and, I guess, round out maybe a young core of 5 young players and try to fill the bench with a bunch of vets and build it out that way. But honestly, either way, regardless of what happens here with Asar Thompson, I would have a pretty strong preference to going maybe the free agency route. Just get a guy who has proven that he's a good defensive big and a good role man and is consistent. More than anything else, that would be incredibly impactful to this team, provided they have size, like you mentioned. Right? Isaiah Stewart, part of his limitation is that he's not all that big. So as a rim protector, he's sufficient, but he's not incredible at it. Where if maybe you added another, 3 or 4 inches of height to him, he actually would be fantastic. So Walker Kessler's a decent name there for that, but just someone proven and someone that can come in and elevate the 4 young guys kind of around him in that way on the defensive end, pick up the mistakes, right? That would be incredibly impactful for a team as young as this one. And so that would be the direction I would tend to lean. Honestly, even if, you're looking at this roster going, wow, Ron Holland and Asar Thompson are going to make it really difficult for JB Bickerstaff to decide to start Tobias Harris. Even if that becomes a conversation, I think I still would lean into vet big, at least as a starter. And then, look, Jalen Duren, there are teams that invested in James Wiseman and Marvin Bagley to be their backup centers, and that's not a mistake. Those guys are capable backup centers. And I think that even if Jalen Duren never figures out his defense, never figures out how to be a neutral to plus defender, what he can give you offensively is still worth having off the bench, because there just aren't a ton of playable NBA big men in the NBA. There's a reason that if a guy in the G League suddenly blocks a lot of shots and rebounds a lot of balls, that he immediately gets a call up somewhere. There's a need for these type of big bodies who can actually play rotation minutes, and at a minimum, Jalen Duren is capable of doing that. So he's not a lost cause rotationally. It's just a question of whether you'd have that or Isaiah Stewart as your backup 5. And that's a totally different question. I don't even want to touch on it right now. So I don't think that Duren's a lost cause or even a bust. If you get a backup out of the 13th pick in the draft, that is a success. So I don't even want to call him a bust. He brings a lot of value offensively, but defensively, it makes it tough to play him 30 minutes. It makes it tough to pay him a big contract, those types of things, which is just kind of the unfortunate reality.
Yeah, and the thing even though you want to see these steps, like you still have some time. Like you don't have to give them a contract extension this offseason. It makes things a little weird and uncomfortable if you don't. But I think the more interesting one is like Ivy, honestly, because
I think
if
you
we
got to pay him if he
yeah,
plays, if he keeps this up. If he
exactly.
doesn't, then no. But
And then it's like, is it weird if you pay Ivy but you don't pay Duren? Like, I mean, I'm almost wondering. We have a lot. We have what 76 more games to go, so there's a lot to be said. But I'm wondering if you do see Jalen Duren as maybe not the starting center of the future, but you still see somewhere on the team for him, like a defined role. Like, is he okay with taking an Isaiah Stewart type extension that isn't, I mean, it's nothing close to the max, but it's still a decent amount of money and it's a real NBA player, but you can't pay all of them. I think the most likely answer is eventually one of these players, the young guys, has to either the Pistons move on from him, there's a trade, whatever happens, but yeah, it's interesting, and we saw it with the Rockets when they were eligible to extend both Sengun and Jalen Green, and there was some weird stuff going on around with that, and they eventually both got some sort of deal. But yeah, I don't know. I just think if what we're seeing from Jalen Duren on the defensive end specifically keeps up, there has to be some other answer that's not on the team right now. But that doesn't mean that there isn't a role for Jalen Duren because, like you said, Wes, everything that he brings on the offensive end and how he plays with Cade as a P&R partner is great. So it's just a tough and weird situation. I hope we can at least, as we get towards the All-Star break and into the end of the season, I hope we can at least see some sort of definition on how it's going to shake out, even though it'll be a bit uncomfortable no matter what.
so we've gone a little long. Again, if you guys are still sticking with us, we appreciate it. We got one more question, just kind of a fun, dumb Detroit sports question. But before we do that, I do just want to spin this, what we've been talking about with Duren, Ivey, and the play of all these young guys so far this season. I want to spin it positively because I do think that there's something good that's coming out of it. And the good thing that's coming out of it is that we're actually learning what these guys
Right.
are right now. One of the biggest problems last season and one of the biggest problems the season before that due to Cade's injury was just that you could not get a great read on who these young players are, especially last season with Monty Williams. Monty Williams is not the reason that the Pistons were the worst team in the league. They were the worst team in the league because their roster was the worst roster in the NBA. But what Monty Williams did poorly was putting his guys in positions to succeed, even despite that. So this is not saying that Monty Williams did well. Monty Williams was very bad last year as the Pistons coach. But because he wasn't putting Cade Cunningham in a position to succeed, because he wasn't putting Jaden Ivey, Asar Thompson, Jalen Duren in positions that match up well with their strengths on the floor, we were not able to actually get this sort of definitive feeling about who they are right now and who they might become in the future. And that's not true anymore. We are seeing that. We're seeing Jaden Ivey being put in a good position offensively and going, wow, okay, maybe he's got something. Maybe this is something that the Pistons should be investing in the future. Maybe he does deserve that extension. We're getting Cade Cunningham put in positions defensively that play to his strengths, and we're going, hey, wow, maybe he actually can be neutral defensively. Maybe he can make some plays while still being a 25-point per game scorer, right? And then on the flip side of that, we're seeing, hey, Jalen Duren's being put in positions that should play to his strengths defensively. He's playing almost exclusively drop coverage, and we're even seeing that off the bench with Isaiah Stewart. The entire defensive scheme is drop coverage, and I don't even think that's the best move for a guy like Isaiah Stewart. But you know about Isaiah Stewart, so they're tailoring everything defensively for Jalen Duren. They're having Jalen Duren kind of every now and then play that hub offensively as a dribble handoff guy. They're doing a lot of dunker spot action and a lot of pick and rolls for him. So we're learning about Jalen Duren. We're learning about all of these young guys. The unfortunate side of it is that not all of them are being, successful in these new roles that play to their strengths here early on in the season. But the good thing about it is that we still are learning. We're still getting this information that's incredibly valuable for how we as fans are watching the game and trying to project out, which is so fun to do when you have so many of these young players. So I think at the end of the day, even though 100% of the young guys are not being successful, the fact that we're actually seeing them in the positions that they could be successful in and then being able to learn from that just by watching, I think that's an incredibly positive thing, even though, like I said, it's not like everyone's succeeding, which is a bummer.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I can't say it any better. There was obviously after the PTSD with Bonnie Williams and everything that
Right.
happened last year, it was honestly a big question going into the year. Like, will Jaden Ivey be put in positions where he's able to succeed? And it's not a question on JB Bickerstaff. It's just a question based on everything that happened previously. So I think it's good. Like everything you said, we're seeing those things and these players be put into situations that complement their game. Even the roster complements their game much more than it did in the past, which is huge as well. So yeah, we're gonna be able to answer a lot of questions on these guys. I think the one weird one is Isaiah Stewart, but like you mentioned, the defensive coverage is being tailored towards Duren and it,
His offensive problems are on him. I'll be honest with that one. Isaiah Stewart's just passed up way too many easy shots. I think it was Bobby Buckets that said his process offensively should basically be catch ball, if open, shoot. Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much. There really shouldn't be much else there for Isaiah Stewart, but that's not how he's been playing, and it's on him, not on JB at all. So we're learning that too. Um,
yeah.
well,
So
whatever.
that's just the weird one, but I think overall everything else, I totally agree with. Yeah, YouTube user Langdon is evaluating what he has. He's not married to any of the previous draft picks. You're right; he hasn't drafted anyone besides Ron Holland, and his game is still very raw and developing. So we'll see what goes on. But yeah, we're getting a lot of tape and stuff to look back to figure out like what's gonna work in the long run.
Usable tape at the end of the day is a very good thing. We had 82 games of unusable tape last year, so it's nice to have 6 of actually usable tape. Let's just close it out on this kind of a fun one. Go Lions. Art Vandelay 81 says, will the Lions swing a trade for an edge rusher? Who will it be? Look, I think that maybe this question was supposed to go to Pride of Detroit, the SB Nation blog there for the Lions. Don't know why. Maybe he just had the colors mixed up. It's a dark blue versus kind of a light blue. Maybe that's what's happened here. But Blake, what do you think? They trading for an edge rusher or not?
I feel like they have to. I'll be honest, I don't know. Like I know Max Crosby is the name, but who knows if he'll actually be available. And I saw some other guys floating out there. So I feel like they have to a trade that doesn't mortgage the future, give up a ton of draft capital, but I don't know what that trade is. I don't know who they're going to play trade for and what it might be. They still look good, but yeah, gotta the Hutchinson injury was a heartbreaker, and hopefully they can get someone to help out, even though you can't really replace what you had. I also just realized that tomorrow, Sunday, the Pistons start at 3:30 and the Lions start at
Yeah.
4:25. So Wes, are you split screening? Are you watching one or the other? What's your plan?
I will be watching one recorded and the other live. I think, honestly, I'll probably end up watching the Pistons game live only because the Pistons Pulse is recording Sunday evening at 8 or 8:30. I can't remember exactly which one. So, you guys, if you're tuning in live here, come talk some more Pistons basketball with us over at the Pistons Pulse tomorrow night. But to make sure that I actually know what's going on, I'll probably watch the Pistons game. And of course, right, if we're talking spoilers, there's no world where I can avoid a spoiler of the Pistons game if I go on and we're doing the Pistons Pulse right after. where I can definitely avoid a spoiler of the Lions game for going on and doing a Pistons podcast right after. So I think that's probably where I'm going to go. Plus, the Lions are just going to beat the Packers anyway, so who cares?
Oh gosh, I feel like I can't.
Knock on wood.
I can't avoid a spoiler either way. And Bobby Bucket said put beef stew at defensive end.
Love it. Yes,
he could do it. Great. Both ways as a tight end too. I feel like that would be really fun.
I don't know. He's got some hands troubles. Maybe he'd be a great blocker. Maybe that's where he would excel.
Or like maybe like a fullback.
Oh, I like it. Yeah, your goal line back. Give it to the 6'8", 2 whatever pound guy to just bury through the line.
Yeah,
I love it.
Yeah, so I don't know what my plan is. Honestly, I thought the Lions were playing at 1, so I'll have to figure that out. But yeah, good choice, Wes. Gotta be prepared for the Pistons Pulse. So it'll be a fun sports day. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, it'll be a good day. So excited for Sunday, and if you guys are listening to this after Sunday, hopefully you're listening after a Pistons win and a Lions win. That would be pretty great to have them both win on the same day. I don't even want to look up when the last time that happened would have been. So hopefully it's on Sunday.
I'm sure we'll find out. Someone will post on Twitter about it, but yeah, hopefully that's the case. And shout out to everyone that joined us live, that's listening on the podcast feed. If you could like, subscribe, leave us a comment, review, really helps us out. So we appreciate you all. And a reminder, you can call our phone line to ask a question, hear your voice on the show. We haven't got phone line questions in a while, so feel free to use that now that we have basketball going on and specific things we can pick apart. It's super fun. The number for that is 313-355-2717. And special thanks to Sean Corp, the managing editor of Detroit Bad Boys, for supporting the show. Shout out to you guys again for all the great questions and talking points. We'll catch you next week, whether on your commute or live with us on YouTube. We can't wait to talk more Detroit basketball with you all.